again, Steffi. Thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you so much for seeing me again. I'm really, really glad we get to chat about the pandemic. So fun.
What do you remember about the day when the theater went dark?
Oh gosh, it's so funny because now we're almost coming up on the 2-year anniversary of the pandemic. And this is what I remember from March 13th, 2020, because that's the time I did come from way for the last time before the pandemic hit. It was Friday the 13th, which is like kind of like really ominous and super weird. And we had been so used to being like doing the show for like sold out houses. There were tons of people there all the time. But on this day, on a Friday night, there were barely like any people there. I'm pretty sure I might be getting the number wrong, but we had about like 300 or 400 people in a like 1,200 seater house. So it felt like a really, really small crowd. So we kind of, I think all of the cast members in Come From Way kind of felt like something bad was about to happen or something bad was happening. And then the next morning, I woke up. We were supposed to have a matinee, and we got a text message from our stage manager, John Gray, saying, "Hey, actually, don't come into work today. We're gonna like shut down the show for 2 weeks because we're gonna try to flatten the curve." Sorry, it makes me like laugh now thinking about it because did we ever think it was actually just going to be 2 weeks? Oh my God. Anyway, so, we're going to try to flatten the curve. It's going to be 2 weeks, like, just like stay calm, whatever. And then the lockdown happened in Ontario and we were kind of stuck in our houses. I wasn't going outside very much. I was like staying away from everybody I knew. I was really scared. It was now looking back on it, uh, it was a wild time. Just so crazy. So crazy. Yeah.
What was it like to be in Ontario during the first wave of the pandemic when you didn't know much about what's going on?
Yeah, that's the thing. I think like, information is power. And I find that at the beginning of the pandemic, we didn't have a lot of information and we like didn't know and scientists didn't know and like people didn't know. Like that's what was so scary about it is that we knew so little about it. I was going to the grocery store and like wiping down my groceries and I was barely going outside. I had like a really at first I thought like, okay, I'm going to use this time to kind of, do some crafting, maybe do some things I haven't had time to do because, doing 8 shows a week at the theater can take over your life a lot. And I just had like let my to-do list get really, really long. So I was like, okay, I'm going to stay inside and like scratch things off of this to-do list. And then when the 2 weeks went by and it became like a month, it became 2 months, it became 3 months. I was like, oh, I'm kind of running out of things to do. So I had to get creative. But yeah, it was really scary. Like looking back at that time, I just feel like I didn't know anything. We didn't know anything. I'm in Toronto here, but my whole family's in Ottawa. So like all of us I felt really kind of like alone in Toronto and kind of like didn't know what was going to come next. But I will say, like, once I got in the groove of having the time off and kind of I kind of had time to explore some different things and kind of do different things that were kind of really beneficial for me personally. And so, yeah, I feel like I utilized the time like in a good way to like for personal growth, which was kind of nice, but it was really scary. Yeah.
I know that you and Lisa worked on a pretty special project during the lockdown.
Yes. I'm so glad you brought that up. Yeah. So Lisa Humber and I decided that we were going to meet every week on Monday night to just talk. Maybe we're going to develop a show. Maybe we were going to talk about something that we could create together. And then one of those nights, over a drink on Zoom, we were like, oh, actually, we should pitch to Mervish that we should do like an Instagram takeover for them about like what artists are doing during the pandemic. And then we kind of snowballed that idea, like snowballed. And then we actually had a pitch meeting with, the Mervish marketing team. And we were like, hey, I think me and Lisa have this great idea. Like maybe we could call it check-in from away. Like that's kind of funny because like come from away, get it? And and they were really into it. And then the idea kind of became bigger and bigger as we started talking about it. John Kay, who works in the marketing department at Mervish, he kind of was like, wouldn't it be cool actually if you did a web series, it came out weekly, you interviewed artists, you found out like what they're up to in isolation, if they're being creative, how missing theater, how much they're missing theater. And it kind of became this amazing way to build community in a time that we were so alone, like sitting alone at home. And the other thing too is that it kind of renewed my hope and my love for theater so much because I kept hearing all of these amazing stories of performers and how they've made it and how incredible things have happened in their careers and how they've worked with insane like creative people. And it was just like this beautiful a way to kind of to share our stories and just like while theater wasn't happening, kind of having an avenue for like to like share as artists, being for the first time ever, like globally, everybody was in the same place. You know what I mean? Like everybody around the world was dealing with the same thing. And I just found it really fascinating to talk to people, creative people who like couldn't do the one thing that they're really, really good at, that like they love telling stories. And I just found so much like solace and inspiration in hearing people's stories. And it made me feel so much less alone. Yeah, especially in the existential crises that I started having, about like, oh my gosh, I've picked this career that like cannot exist right now. And I've always identified so much as an artist and as a performer that when you took that part of me away, I was like, oh my God, who is she? Like, who is Steffi without performing? And, who am I really? So it was like a really big time for personal growth, but also I think hearing artists kind of going through the same thing selfishly really helped me get through the pandemic, to be honest. Yeah. Yeah.
I really enjoyed watching your show every week.
Oh, thank you. I'm so happy you watched it. Thank you. It's so nice.
What surprised you the most when you talked to so many people during this period of time?
What surprised me the most? That's a great question. I think the thing that surprised me the most was probably that just everybody was in the same boat. Like I thought maybe because I felt like I was hitting a wall a little bit because I was like, I didn't know what to do with all of my creative energy in a way. But I think what surprised me is that a lot of artists were feeling that way, and it made me feel less alone. So definitely that's something that really surprised me while doing, check-in from away specifically. What else really surprised me? I mean, so many things. We heard so many stories, honestly. Oh, another thing that surprised me, so to speak. I mean, I don't know if I'm surprised at how many people were willing to talk to me and Lisa. Like I was surprised how many people we wrote to that we had no connections with, like no personal connections. We got like amazing people on the show that I never would have thought would have agreed to do it. Like we had like Tom Power and Mary Walsh and Johnny Harris and like all these amazing people that we basically cold called, you know what I mean? And just asked, hey, we're doing this web series about artists in isolation. We'd love to have you on. And like we couldn't believe that people actually would get back to us, like these people who are just like really well known in Canada. I was just like, and internationally, of course, but I literally couldn't believe all the people that we got to speak to us on the show. Like it was really crazy. Yeah, so crazy. Yeah.
Steffi, for those who don't know, what was the timeline like? Like, when did the theater go dark? When did you reopen?
Oh yeah. So Come From Away in Toronto at the Royal Alexandra Theatre closed down for the pandemic on March 13th, 2020. And then we were closed for, I think, I wish I could get this number right. I think it was, oh my gosh, how many days? 521 days? Is that it?
Yeah, I think 21 months. So sounds
Yeah,
right.
yeah. Okay. So yeah, okay. So we were closed down for 21 months. And then in November, at the end of November of 2021, we started rehearsals again to go back up, to have our grand return to the theater. And we sort of did, but we only did 9 performances. And then, the Omicron variant kind of came sweeping Ontario. And we had yet another wave of COVID-19 and another lockdown here. And so that closed down the show. And unfortunately, it closed down the show for good this time. And most of us caught Omicron, or caught, COVID-19. And yeah, it just, it went through all of us so quickly. I can't even express to you how fast all of us got sick. It was a really contagious variant, just putting it out there. Yeah. So that's sort of what happened in a nutshell. Yeah.
But do you remember about that reopening performance
Oh,
when you?
yeah. I'm so happy you're bringing this up because I'm pretty sure it was December 15th, 2021. Sorry that all my facts are super blurry. I feel like the pandemic makes like timelines really weird. Like I don't remember what day it is today or what month it is or what date it is. I have no idea. But I think, yeah, we had our reopening on December 15th, 2021. And, it was a full house. And I got to tell you, like, even just thinking about it right now, just makes me smile from ear to ear because it was truly one of the most amazing nights of my entire career and one of the most incredible like nights of my life, probably period. I've never ever experienced something like that before. I was overwhelmed with like love, and people really wanted to be there. And, we walked out on stage and people gave us a standing ovation for so long. Like, I don't know how long it lasted. My concept of time was like, I don't know, but they gave us a standing ovation and cheered before we had even said a word or sung a line, before anything happened. And it lasted so long that all of us started applauding the audiences as well. And it was just like the room was electrifying. It was one of the most honestly insane nights of my life. There's no way to describe it. I've never been so proud and so honored and so happy to be back on a stage. And I realized how much I had missed it too. Just kind of like sharing the energy in a room, with, a bunch of strangers sitting in a dark room watching us tell a story. And I was like, you know what? This is the magic of theater. Like, this is what I missed so much. This is what made the pandemic so difficult for me, I think, was like the lack of community and the lack of camaraderie and not being able to be together and tell stories. And, Zoom is great. No shade on Zoom, but there's an energy that you just can't feel when you're in the room with people. Just it changes everything. It just makes it's magical. And it was like, honestly, December 15th, 2021 was one of the most magical nights like of my life, let alone my career, like everything. It was such a beautiful celebration of everything that we've had to sacrifice during the last 21 months. And also, I mean, this sounds really morbid, but it is not lost on me that a lot of people, did not have an easy time during this time. And a lot of people, died from this virus, and families were broken. And it's not lost on me. And I think that's why it made it so special too. Like, hey, we made it through this and we're here right now. And I was just like it was a really beautiful, touching, moving moment that I feel like I don't think any of us, hopefully, my God, I'm just going to knock on wood right now. I'm very superstitious. I don't think any of us will ever go through something like this ever again. Anyway, that's the hope. And I just go like, wow, we are making history right now. Like, this is we've been in a pandemic for 2 years, and theater died and came back and rose from the ashes and died again. And I just go, you know what? Hopefully there's another triumphant return down the line. But yeah, sorry, that was a really long-winded answer to just say it was one of the most amazing nights of my life. Yeah.
Did you have any special visitors that night, Steffi?
Oh, that night. Well, listen, I feel like everybody was there. So yeah, everybody was a special visitor. I don't want to pinpoint a specific person or persons, because I go, everyone who showed up that night touched my heart, because it just made me remember how much people do care about the arts, and people do care about telling stories, and do care about theater. And yeah, I just feel I wish there was more of an infrastructure to kind of support that, especially in a pandemic, which is what we learned was, not possible for right now. But I really hope and pray that there's a bright future ahead. But no, all the people who were there that night have a piece of my heart. And also, I think we went through like one of the most amazing nights together. So like everyone who was there, I feel like it was, for me anyway, like a historical moment in time. Just people coming together again. It's just, it was so touching and so overwhelming, honestly. Very, very overwhelming. Yeah. Yeah.
What was it like to perform again during the pandemic? Like, what were the COVID safety procedures, I guess? Like, did anything change when you came back?
Yeah, a lot of things changed. Oh my goodness, so many things changed when we came back. We had to we did antigen tests 3 times a week, and we had to wear masks most of the time. Though when we were running the show and all that stuff, we could take our masks off when we were rehearsing. Sometimes, we were trying to keep 6 feet apart as much as we could, and kind of like be safe otherwise. But yeah, it was weird. We filled in the questionnaires every day before going to work, and it was just a lot of extra steps, but obviously a lot of extra steps that I don't mind taking if it means keeping everybody safe. Um, and yeah, God, what else? Vaccine passports here were a really big thing in Ontario, which I'm very grateful for. We kind of had to do like all the due diligence of the tests, the questionnaires, making sure we were monitoring our symptoms, and kind of all that good stuff. But yeah, it was just like it was the same except different, you know, just like a lot more steps, but basically the same though otherwise. Yeah.
Steffi, how did you find out that the show has permanently closed?
Okay. Well, getting into the nitty gritty now. It was a really shocking, it was pretty shocking. A couple of us had tested positive for COVID-19 on antigen tests. So they decided to close down the show for a few days. And during those few days, a few more people tested positive, and then a few more people, and then a few more people. And then a lot of us, I think the final head count was at least, I think 13 of us had gotten COVID. I'm not quite sure exactly if that's the right number, but it was around there anyway. So a lot of us had gotten sick, and Mervish decided to take the step of actually just postponing a few shows, which we did. And then at the end of the few days postponements, which was right before Christmas, like right before Christmas, we received an email, from Mervish saying that, despite their best efforts, unfortunately, just the Omicron variant had other plans for us. And yeah, it closed down. And then, a couple of hours later, the press already knew. So it was like it was a whirlwind, like reading the email to getting on the phone with a couple of cast members and going like, oh, I'm in shock. I can't believe this is happening. This is really sad. And yeah, and then I kind of went through the 7 stages of grief. It was kind of like a big up and down roller coaster ride of just like feeling a lot of emotions, and being in shock, and then in denial, and then upset and angry and sad, and then kind of grateful in a way that I even got to go back and got to do it again. I think the biggest sadness for me was that after these 21 months, I felt like the show like kind of felt differently for me and was like more, not more special, that's not the right way to say it, but it just like it landed differently on me and it landed differently on the audiences, I think, that were able to see it, the 9 shows that we did. I just felt like the heaviness of the pandemic helped me, I think, make my performance better. And I think one of the things that I was most sad about is that I actually didn't get to tell I wasn't able going to tell the story again with kind of the well of experience that I had now. And yeah, I think like, we got to do Come From Away for like 3 years. And during that time, I felt like my performance was always kind of changing and evolving because I was changing and evolving. And then having so much time away from it and then coming back, it was so full of joy and happiness. And also the heaviness was really present. And it had a different, it landed really differently on me and other people and other cast members as well, I think. Yeah.
Did the standbys have a chance to go on at all?
Yes, they did. Yes, the standbys totally had a chance to go on. Yeah, Amir went on, Kaylin went on, David Silvestri went on. Maybe that's it. I'm not sure. And my heart goes out. We had 3 new cast members join the show. And I honestly cannot believe that. So Kyle Brown, who replaced Kevin Vidal, who played Bob and Others, he got to do it the 9 times, which is like great. But then we had 2 new standbys, Sarah and Jeremy, who didn't get to go on. But they had rehearsals, they had standby rehearsals, which is great. But they never got to actually do the show and experience what it felt like to have the audience just leap to their feet at the end, and just like how responsive and excited people felt to be there, and like the electricity in the room every night. And honestly, my heart broke for them when we got that email, because I had gotten to do the show 861 times, which is a lot. But I will say I was really upset I didn't get to do it 1,000. I told myself, I was like, if there's a show I'm going to do 1,000 times, like this is it. You know what I mean? Yeah, honestly, my heart broke for Jeremy and Sarah, who never got to do it on stage. Honestly, what a cruel, Omicron is one cruel mistress. Let's just say that.
I know that James Carl was able to join the national tour for a short stretch.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Yes. We were all so jealous and cheering him on from the sidelines. I'm so happy that James got to join the tour for a week. Actually, you spoke to Nick Duckart. Him and I talk all the time, and we chat and voice note each other. And when they were there together, it was so much fun to kind of chat with him and just be like, oh my gosh, you have James. We love James. He's the best. And honestly, it's just such a great time. And it's fun. I love getting to talk to Nick because I kind of get to live vicariously through him, because he's still doing the show on tour. And I feel like, I'm just like living through him. He still tells me the funny things that happen on stage during the night, shows. And I love hearing all his stories. Yeah. And I still feel like, the show's very much always going to be a part of me. It's just such a huge part of my life that I think it always will be, no matter what.
I wish I could see that, the performance in Toronto before you closed.
Yeah, I so wish you could have been there too. Obviously, COVID had other plans and you're not in Canada, but honestly, it was just such a beautiful show. Yeah. I wish you could have been there too. Yeah. But who knows, I feel like maybe, the Come From Way journey like isn't over for good in Canada. I feel like it's such an incredible show that whether or not I will be a part of it down the line, which I really hope I will, but I'm sure it's going to have a life. It's had so many lives outside of Canada. And that's the incredible thing about this show. It's like, who knew, like this show from Canada by Canadians, performed by Canadian, like all these incredible stories of Canadians, has been a global smash hit. Like, who knew? Just making history with Canadian musical theater. It's a show that's performed around the world. I just find that incredible. And honestly, being a part of this piece of history in Canada, and being the only all Canadian cast who's performed the show, like, it's really, really special. And I'm so grateful that honestly, my gratitude like knows no bounds for kind of how much the show has changed all of our lives who were involved in it, but not only people who were in it, but the people who've seen it too. I've heard so many incredible stories of people just seeing the show again and again and making them feel like they want to be a better person and kind of, and I find that that's not, Come From Waste kind of like theater at its best. It's theater that like you come in and you feel changed when you leave and you want to be a better person, and it inspires you to do something different in your life. For yeah, it's just, have we ever been a part of something this great, or will we ever again? I hope so, but I think that, Come From Way is an anomaly. It's like one of those incredibly special, unique experiences that I think as an actor, you don't get to have all that much, maybe. So there's that. I think the story of human kindness and just humanity being at its best is a story we're always going to need it as human beings. Especially during a pandemic. I think that's what was so incredible about telling this story specifically during a pandemic, I guess, is that we need each other. We're not meant to be alone. Like, humans aren't meant to live solitary lives and not share their stories and not be there for each other. And I think Come From Way just reminds us of like the best version of that, just the best version of ourselves and each other, and being there for each other, supporting each other, lifting each other up. Like, it's just like it has like all the ingredients for like it's the perfect show. Like, dare I say, it's a perfect show. It really is. Yeah.
What is it like to be a Canadian actor during the pandemic? Does the government support you financially, or like what is it like?
Yeah. Well, this is a tricky question. I feel like I don't have all the answers for you on that, but what I can say is that I was really devastated when the show closed because I felt like the government wasn't offering enough support for the arts to carry on, or for us to go through maybe like another temporary shutdown and then come back. So I think that was a hard pill to swallow, because I feel like art and telling stories is really important. And I feel like governments all around the world should always support their artists, because, I keep telling my friends this. I keep saying during the pandemic, when we were all locked down and we were alone in our apartments, sitting on our couches and twiddling our thumbs, what did we do? Well, we turned to artists. We watched Netflix, and we were on Amazon Prime and streaming shows and watching artists do live things on Zoom, or taking a dance class or taking a yoga class, like over, we need creative people. We needed creative people, and I find it really devastating, and it hurts my feelings so much that we don't I feel like, yeah, we could afford to have more support from our government here in Ontario and in Canada as a whole. Just support artists and the arts more. So that makes me really sad, and I feel like maybe if we had that backing, maybe, Come From Way wouldn't have closed as fast as it did. So that's really sad. But also, there are other avenues. Obviously, I have to say, I got really lucky. The pandemic kind of opened a new door for me, which was to do some film and TV. I did do a Christmas movie with James Call, who plays Nick and Others in Come From Away. And that was amazing. Like, honestly, the film and TV industry kind of found a way to still operate during this time, which was really impressive. And it was just like, it was really cool to kind of open that door all the way and kind of like, go into the unknown of that. And that was a really incredible way to kind of still be able to utilize kind of my skill set. Because trust me, what I realized during the pandemic is that my skill set is completely useless if I can't be on stage or tell a story or act or sing for somebody or like do something. So again, just I wish that the government offered more support, because I think, well, I never stop saying it. I think artists are like, we need creative people who like, it makes society so rich and communities so rich to tell each other stories. And I think what we don't realize too, and people who might like poo poo the arts, is that we are all performers. Like all of us perform in some capacity sometimes. Like even when you're sitting with your friend and having a cup of tea and telling a story, that storytelling is performing. Like you're an artist too in those moments where you're relaying these facts and telling a story to people. Like I think people don't realize that all of us kind of have creative drive, and that's why we need to support people who like do it for a living too, because I think that's how we survive, by telling each other stories.
Did the coronavirus change how you feel about this industry?
Oh, oh, that's a tough question. It's a tough question to answer, because I think yes. I think the answer is yes. It did change the way that I perceived it. I think there's no one answer that I could give you, though I will say, like, it's been a roller coaster ride. I've truly gone from feeling absolutely useless to feeling like what I have to offer is really important and great and fantastic, that I can do what I do. And then I kind of like go back and forth like a pendulum between like I'm useless and I'm not useless. I don't know. So yes, and I think weirdly enough, that's a feeling I didn't have before the pandemic. I never actually felt like, oh, the arts, like who cares, like whatever. Not that I feel that way now, but I think on a more personal level, I had a lot of questioning that came up during the pandemic. I had a lot of moments where I wondered if I was like a viable, great, important member of society. Like it came up. Like there's a lot of stuff that came up for me that kind of made me feel, honestly, useless is kind of the best word I can come up with it for this. But yeah, it kind of made me feel like really depleted, or yeah, I don't know. Yeah. And then the industry, like obviously when theater didn't exist for a while, it hurt me really bad. Like theater's like the love of my life. Like I just, like it's my first love, it's my forever love. And I think that not having that like truly put me in a state of like, like I said before, kind of existential crisis, where I started questioning myself so much and questioning, my career path so much, and tried to discover like who I was without that thing that I had felt had defined me for so long. But in a way, I really do feel like I'm coming out the other end so much richer as a human being, because I think I grew so much from having all the doubt and having all the fear and having all the feeling like I had failed so much. Kind of, I feel helped me, first of all, not be afraid of that as much. And second of all, kind of just feel like, oh yeah, like I came out the other end and I'm still here. And I think human beings are so resilient, which is something also that has really impressed me from all of my friends, all of, the people in this industry. I just go like, man, artists are the toughest people around. Like just, they're so tough. It's just like, we keep getting knocked down all the time, when we're not getting jobs or we're failing or we're not doing that thing or reaching that note, or you know what I mean? Like artists are like born to fail. I feel like if you're not failing as an artist, you're like not succeeding. You know what I mean? Such a double whammy. So it was really kind of it was a very incredible time for growth for me as well. Yeah.
Steffi, is there anything else you would like to talk about?
Oh, okay. Okay, pandemic. Okay, let me think about it. It's a good question. You know what? I will say this. I think the thing that the pandemic has also really taught me is that it's okay to sit in the question and the questions and not have the answers necessarily. And I think right now I'm having a lot of feelings about what is the future of theater in general and what is the future of theater for me, like specifically. And and I honestly, it keeps me up at night a little bit because I just go, oh, like do I soldier on and keep doing this thing that I've loved my whole life, or pivot a little bit or whatever? I am having a lot of questions about it. But I think the pandemic has truly taught me that, like, having the questions and being in the juice of your thoughts is always, it's a good thing, and not knowing the answers is totally okay. I think that we'd be a lot less stressed out as people if we just accepted sometimes that we just don't have the answers, and yeah, like, again, the pandemic for me, and I hate saying this because, again, I want to acknowledge all the loss and the grief that has happened during this time. Um, but in a weird way, the pandemic happening became a good thing for me. Like, it really helped me grow and realize a lot of things. And growth is so painful. Like, everybody know it hurts and it's uncomfortable and you don't like it. So much better to stay in the comfort of something that you've known and the way you've known yourself for so long. But I genuinely feel like the pain of this pandemic for me personally has been, like, well worth it. Like, it opened some new doors that I don't know would have opened if the pandemic hadn't happened. So in a weird way, I'm grateful for it, even though I hate it. It's just like, it's just a weird, and it also reminds us that, like, two things can be true at once. You can be, like, really grateful but really angry, and that's okay. We're complex human beings who contain multitudes, and two things can be true at once. Sometimes three things can be true at once. Like, it's just like there's no right or wrong, or, like, except for the obvious things. But like, how we feel is, like, what makes us human and what makes us so colorful and so interesting. And again, it comes down to, like, yeah, that's why we tell stories, like, to relate to each other, to feel like we're not alone. And I find that that's yeah, that's just, like, one of the things that I love about the arts, and that I've liked about the pandemic that opened up for me. I'm like, oh yeah, you realize how much you need people, how much you need stories, and how much you need each other to just survive. And yeah, and more than just survive, I hope we come out of this having survived, but also, like, come out as better people, hopefully, just like those brave, amazing people in Newfoundland and Come From Ways during 9/11. I'm sure it changed everyone who was there, just like that event kind of changed all of our lives. It's just like, yeah, this pandemic is kind of like, it's going to change all of us, hopefully for the better. I hope that it doesn't harden anyone. I'm sure it will, but I hope we find our way back to, like, loving each other and being open, and just, like, we went through something really traumatic together, and that's something we can all relate to. Yeah, except for the unborn babies right now, you know what I mean? We've all gone through this together, and it's been really hard, but hopefully we're all walking away with something. Yeah.
That's truly thought-provoking, Steffi. Thank
Oh,
you.
good. I'm glad. Yeah, I hope so. Yeah. Yeah. I've had a lot of time to think by myself in my apartment. So that's why you're like, oh, it's thought provoking. I was like, well, I sure hope so. After 2 years of sitting in here by myself and thinking about stuff. Yeah, I hope that I've pondered of what is the meaning of life. This is what I came up with in the pandemic. Yeah.
Anything you would like to tell the Come From Way fans before we wrap it up?
Oh, okay. Come From Away fans. Okay, let me think. I'm going to look straight into the camera for this one. Come From Away is a really special show. Like, it's like one of the most unique theatrical experiences I've ever had in my career. But I think what makes it the most special is the people who come and see the show again and again and again and again. Like you're like the people who take on this show to heart and the people who spread the message of this show in their everyday life years or months or weeks, whatever, after they've seen the show, that's what makes the show so incredibly special. It's like the community of people who take on just the amazing like moral of the show and who live it out in their lives. So you're very special, and thank you very much for being you and loving the show as much as you do. Also, I call myself, I'm a Come From Way fan. Even though I was like in the show, I'm a fan of the show. Like, and you know, I'll never forget the first time I saw the show at the Royal Alex many, many years ago with the Broadway cast before they went to New York. I walked away and I wanted to be a better person. Like, it did it to me. And I just go like, this is the power of theater. This is theater at its best. You know, fans and people walking away and just feeling full of life and kindness. There's nothing that compares to that, like ever. It's incredible. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Steffi.
Thank you so much again for taking the time to do this and for asking me to do it. And I can't wait to see it.